I'll go ahead and start. Thank you for attending, making the time. I'll start by introducing myself just very briefly. As I was introduced, I'm Prashant. I am a senior director at Sigma in the enterprise architecture group. And I have an interesting story. So I used to be a Sigma customer, used Sigma. I was extremely happy with the product, loved the people, and that's how I find myself as an employee at Sigma. So the goal in the session today is to really introduce you to Sigma. And I want to pay specific emphasis to how Sigma makes self-serve exploration possible for really business users. We'll do that with the help of a demo. But before I jump into the demo, I won't spend too much time on slides, but before I jump into the demo, I'll just introduce Sigma a bit to you, and then we'll go straight into the demo. So Sigma is a modern business intelligence solution, and there are several tenets to Sigma. It provides you with a live view to your data in Databricks. So that actually helps, any problems associated with stale data extracts pretty much vanish. It's been purpose-built to interact with cloud data platforms such as Databricks. And it also leverages the speed, the scale, and security that Databricks offers. But it does so within the familiar context of what I like to call a spreadsheet user interface. So typically, if you look at dashboards, curated dashboards tend to, if you have a curated dashboard, it's something that has been pre-built for you. It kind of creates a gap between how your business users interact with data in your data platform. What Sigma does is it acts as a bridge. And it really allows, and you'll see this in the demo, but it really kind of bridges that gap and lets your end users, your business users, make use of the data that's sitting in your data platform. My hope is I'll be able to show that to you today. So what we'll do is I've broken this down into two sections. They are kind of not equally spaced. So the first part of the talk, I'll show you how easy it is to connect Sigma to Databricks. And we'll just build a very simple dashboard, nothing sophisticated. But what we're going to do is most of the time we are going to spend in the second half where I'll show you how Sigma makes this self-serve exploration possible. So let's jump into the demo. As I go through this demo, I'm going to be assuming two roles. The first role will be of a data analyst, someone who has been tasked with connecting to Databricks and also building a curated dashboard. And then what we'll do, and this is kind of the crux of the talk, is assume this role of a merchandising manager. Both these people work at the same company. So the data analyst connects Sigma to Databricks, provides the data, and then this merchandising manager is where it'll be very interesting, and I'll talk about what this merchandising manager does when we get there. All right, so now what I'll do is, let's get out of here. I'll go to our demo. So the first thing I'll do is assume the role of this data analyst. So the business team at this company has asked this data analyst to, as I said, connect Sigma to Databricks and then build a simple dashboard. So in Sigma, it's actually very easy to connect to a cloud data platform like Databricks. In the administration panel, so up here, actually, I'm just going to get used to this. So right here, we have an administration panel. And if you go to this administration panel, you get to the administration page, and on the left-hand side is a panel called Connections. So this is how you create a connection in Sigma. So I'll go ahead and create a connection. I'll give it a quick name. Let's call it DB demo. I'll select Databricks as the connection type. And then if you look at this, there are just a very few simple parameters that need to be provided for you to connect to Databricks. If I go to, actually, I'll quickly switch to the Databricks console. So I've already created a SQL warehouse in Databricks. So the three things that I need to connect Sigma to Databricks is the server host name, the HTTP path, and I'll also need a personal access token. That's all you really need. So switching back to Sigma, the way it maps to Sigma is the server host name is nothing but the host here, The HTTP path is the HTTP path, it's the same name. And then finally, the access token. So that's all you need to give to connect Sigma to Databricks. There are a few other parameters here that I'll kind of skip for the sake of time, but they can do some interesting things as well. So for the sake of today's talk, I've already gone ahead, let's cancel out of here. I've already gone ahead and created a connection. It's this connection right here, Databricks SQL endpoint that we'll use. So just click on this just for a sec. You'll see that I have the host and the HTTP path here, and it obviously does not show us the personal access token that I needed. So that's really it. I'm connected to Databricks. So now, for this data analyst role that I have assumed, my business team had asked me to make sure that after I connect to Databricks, I give them access to a sales order table. So what I'll do next as the data analyst is show you how you can browse the data in Databricks. So it's once I'm in the connection, there are many ways to get to this, but since I'm already in the connection, what I'll do is click on this Browse Connection button right here. So when I do that, on the left-hand side, you'll notice these are the catalog and the schema and the tables that I have access to. So the ones that are of interest to us today for the demo are these two tables right here. So this plugs retail table contains sales order data. And this customer table is a pretty simple dimension table which just contains some customer details. So let's go ahead and click on this plugs retail table. So when I do that, what Sigma does is gives me a preview of the data that is sitting in that table. I can see all of the columns. So the first thing I'll do is just go ahead and create what Sigma calls a data set. Think of a data set as kind of a meta representation of the table. We are not storing any data. Sigma never stores any data. Everything happens live against Databricks. So I'll save this data set in this folder here. Let's call it sales data. So Sigma went ahead and created that data set. And now, when I look at this closely, one of the things that my business team had asked me to do is to make sure that the customer details were available to them. So if I look at this table alone, I'll just scroll to the right here. If you notice, I have the customer name and I have this customer ID, but I don't have any other customer address details here. And that's why that other customer table comes into play. So what Sigma allows you to do visually, you can always write SQL in Sigma, but it allows you to visually create joins. So as a data analyst, I'll go ahead and I'll edit this data set. And I go to this worksheet tab, and I'll add a second table, if you will, to this data set. And the table I'm going to pick this time around is my customer table. So I already had the customer key and the customer name, if you remember, in my sales table itself. So I don't think I want to bring these two in, but these 4 columns are the ones that are of interest to me to bring from this join. So I'll just select those, and then I'll take my customer key as the column that I'll do the join on. So I'll specify the column that I'm doing a join on. I'll leave this as a left join, but you can select other kinds of joins like inner join and so on. Let's say done. So very simply, in a visual manner, this data analyst was able to create this join, bring in the columns that were missing from the table, and now I'll go ahead and publish this data set. So now once I publish this data set, I won't go into this today, but you can control, you have pretty fine granular control over permissioning and so on. But once I publish a data set, that data set is now available for other people in my company to use. So let's, the next thing that we'll do as this data analyst is create a simple dashboard. So from within this data set, let's go ahead and explore this data set. So here, When I did that, what Sigma does is it takes that data set and it just brings it in as a very simple table in my workbook. So think of this workbook as my starting point for building a dashboard. So if you remember, what I had been asked is, one of the things that I had been asked is to actually show sales by region to my business team. So when I look at this though, I realize that this cost and this price are actually the unit cost and the unit price. So at a minimum, what I need to do is to calculate the totals. So I'll very quickly add 3 columns. And let's call the first column COGS for cost of goods sold. I'll just rename these columns first, and then I'll actually create the formula. I'll create another column called sales amount. And then I'll create a third column while we are at it called gross profit. So now the cost of goods sold is really nothing but the quantity times the price, sorry, the cost. And then the sales amount is nothing but the quantity times the price. And then the gross profit is going to be, let's actually get rid of this. The gross profit is nothing but the sales amount minus the COGS. So I can also do things like, if I select this cost through gross profit here, I can quickly change formatting, and pretty simple to do that. So once I've done this, now I'm ready to create my simple dashboard. So I can create from this table a child visualization. Sigma selects a bar by default, but you can actually select other kinds of visualizations as well. And in this child visualization, I leave it as a bar. All I need to do is take this sales amount and drag it to my y-axis. I need my store region, and I'll drag that to my x-axis. And then I think it makes sense to break this down, let's say, by when the sale took place. So I can take my order date and move it to color. By default, Sigma will actually show this by day, which is too much, doesn't make sense. So I'm going to go ahead and truncate that to a year. So now I've built a pretty straightforward dashboard which just shows you the sales by store region and breaks it down by year. Now I can go ahead and save this workbook. Let's say we save this workbook, we'll call it sales dash. And now this workbook is available for other people in my company to use. Sigma also has pretty powerful collaboration features. So once I publish this workbook, I can actually put in a comment here. I can tag people, and I can, so that the business team now knows that the work that they had asked me to do is actually available. So the next thing I'll do is actually I'll switch gears a little bit. I'm going to move to the more interesting part of our demo, which is the merchandising manager. So for the merchandising manager, the CEO of this company that these people work at had asked this merchandising manager to create a campaign. They want to revive a loyalty program, let's say, for their top customers. So what the CEO told this merchandising manager, let's say, is that, hey, I'd like you to focus on sales in the southern region, and let's focus this campaign on people who are buying computers. So that's all the information that this merchandising manager has been given, which is not enough by itself to actually create a campaign. So what we'll do in the rest of the talk is to show how this merchandising manager can use Sigma and use a dashboard that had been built for this merchandising manager to get to the level of detail that they need from the data to create this campaign. If you think about it, when I'm creating this campaign, what I really need to know is what are the customers that I need to target in this campaign, and that's what we will do. So as a merchandising manager, any user really, when I log in into Sigma, your starting point is this home page. When I was showing this to you as the data analyst, I directly took you to the administration panel, but this is what people see when they first log in into Sigma. So in the home page, at the very top, you see recent documents that you worked on. Just below it are documents that other people in your company may have worked on. And then on the right-hand side, at the bottom, there's this help icon that you can use to talk to Sigma's extremely technical support team. And I'll actually kind of deviate here a little bit. When I was a customer, this was one of the things that I loved about Sigma because, one, I didn't have to talk to them a lot, but even when I needed to, you always get an answer from them. And they're really technical, so it really helps when you start using Sigma. You can also access other documentation. You can also schedule office hours with the technical team if you need to from here. So let's actually jump into our analysis. So I'm, at this merchandising manager, I happen to be an avid Sigma user, and I know that there's a dashboard that I use in my day-to-day life, which has the data that I need to create that campaign that we've been talking about. And it's this dashboard right here, the sales performance dashboard. So let's go ahead and click on the dashboard. So when I look at this, there are a host of metrics and KPIs here. I'm very familiar with them. As I said, I use them on a day-to-day basis. So I know that this is the information that I need to start my analysis. So when I look at this, if I look at this, I see these two charts here that seem very familiar to me. When I look at this line chart, which is showing the sales by month and store region, I see that there's a steep cliff kind of at the beginning. It's pretty common not to have the cleanest data possible. The reason why there's a steep cliff, I just happen to know it, is this company started collecting their sales data right there, right? So the first month there is data missing, and that's why it looks like there's a steep cliff. But this is really an artificial cliff. If you present this to somebody, they might have questions about it, and it might reduce their trust in this visualization. So what I can do as a merchandising manager is I click on this point, and I can exclude this particular month. So if you think about it, this business user was able to do this without actually having to go to anybody. They didn't have to get anybody else's help. They were able to filter this visualization themselves. So that's one example of how Sigma makes interacting with these dashboards, interacting with data very easy. Now I'll move my attention to this bar graph. So in this bar graph, you'll see that I have sales by region. And I was interested in looking at the southern region and computers. So what I'll do is I'll drill for the southern region, and I will drill into my product family. So what Sigma will do is it will change my x-axis to the product family, and it has applied a filter to this bar to show data only for the southern region. So again, this user was visually able to do this drilling. Nobody in the data team or in the data engineering team had to create this predefined drill path for this person. It's really untethered. They do what they want to. Now, once I am looking at computers and tablets, if you think about it, I need to figure out, so I've made use of the information that the CEO provided, right? The southern region and computers. But in order for me to build a campaign, what I again need to get to is who are the customers I should go after. So the next thing I'll do is I'll go to this computers, and I'll drill down to the store name. So what this does is now I know in the southern region for computers, so both these filters are applied, I'm seeing by store, and it's sorted. So this is the store that's the best performing store. So the next thing, again, I want to get to the list of customers. So I'll maximize this, and when I maximize it, what Sigma is going to do is give me access to the granular row-level data that's driving this visualization, which is extremely powerful. So continuing to focus on this top store, the next thing I notice is this metric here. It actually makes sense to drive such a campaign to actually look at the spend per customer instead of just the total spend at that store. So I'm going to, as a business user, just very quickly change this metric to say, instead of just the sum of sales, let's actually find out the distinct customers just divided by the distinct count of customers. So now I have the spend per customer. So then what I'll do next is, again, I think I want to kind of narrow the focus of my campaign. Instead of worrying about all of these stores, I'll just look at the top store. Now I'll drill again, and this time around, I'll drill to the customer name. Now when I do that, this is very interesting because I see that there's a pretty clear cliff here. So these are probably the customers that I should start with. So to get these customer names, I can go to this column, and I can create a filter on this column, and I'll set the minimum to 60,000. And if I collapse this column below, these are the 29 odd customers that I should focus on. So all the work that I have done till now I can save it, put a comment in, and let somebody else in my company actually take this information that I was able to get to and help them drive the campaign. I didn't actually show this, but one of the things I'll iterate is that everything that I did, including the filters, creating these drill paths, all of this was creating machine-generated SQL behind the scenes. And that SQL was running live against Databricks, which is very powerful. So I'll take a pause here, which is pretty much the end of the demo that I wanted to show. The thing that I'll highlight is, again, Sigma, if you think about it, as a business user, I was able to go from a high-level published dashboard, right? The dashboard that I started with was a curated dashboard. I didn't build it. But then I was able to go from that dashboard and ask my own questions, do my own drills, my own filters, and really not just ask the questions, but also be able to kind of drive the insights and find the answers to those questions to get to my ultimate goal. So I'll actually take a pause, pretty much the end of the demo. We also have, what I'll do is, let me just quickly show this to you. You don't have to take my word for it, obviously. Sigma offers a free trial. It's very easy to sign up. You sign up, and you can just like I showed, you can connect to your cloud data platform, Databricks, and run with it and start analyzing your data. Actually, I'll kind of stop the demo here and open it up to questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Prashant. Does anyone have any questions?
So you used a single access token to connect Sigma to Databricks. I assume you're able to control access to individual tables within Sigma to different users?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, so what you do is, that's where the datasets come in. So if you wanted to do that, you would give, if different teams needed to have access to different tables, you would do it by controlling the access on those datasets. Is that done through Sigma, or is that done through Unity Catalog and Databricks? You can do either. Our customers do it either way. Datasets is one way to do it. If you wanted to control it on the Databricks level, on the Databricks side, you can do that as well in the Unity Catalog. Yeah.
So another question, now that you've got to this point, a lot of times what we'll need to do is take the data and get it out of the system to send it to a mailing campaign or whatever they have. How do you export it from?
So there are a couple ways. Let me actually collapse this again. So there are several ways you can do it. One way to do it is to just download the data into different formats like CSV and Excel. We also have webhooks. So let's say that you wanted to schedule this export on a periodic basis, or even ad hoc send it to a webhook. You have an API of some sort that you want to send it to, you can do that as well.
There's a button there to export it out.
Say again?
So how do you export that specific table where you drill down to the number of members that you want the campaign to be run off of?
The actual table where you were seeing the customers. So if you actually download this data to CSV, it will actually show you the filtered customers.
I have a question. So can you publish this as a live dashboard and make it available to permissioned group, user group?
So once this dashboard, whatever state this dashboard is in, you publish it. So actually there's, as soon as I save it, it's actually already in a published state.
Okay.
And then depending upon where this dashboard is present or where this workbook is present, you can control permissions to, think of it as a folder structure, if you will. You can control permissions as to who has access to those folders and therefore to the objects or workbooks that are inside that folder.
Is it a live, is that live data? Do you need to refresh it? Like Power BI, you need to control like a refresh schedule, right?
This is live data. So when you are in the dashboard, when you're looking at the data, it's live. If, let's say, this is a use case that we've seen. Let's say you're kind of showing this dashboard on a TV screen somewhere in an office, right? And you want it to refresh periodically.
Yeah.
You can actually set up a refresh schedule on the workbook to say, I want it to automatically pull in the latest data every X minutes.
Is there a limitation on refreshing? Because like Power BI, they allow you to refresh every hour or so. Like,
No.
and resource usage.
The resource usage, in the end, you're making use of the underlying data platform, in this case, Databricks. So as long as the warehouse is sized properly, the SQL warehouse is sized properly in Databricks, you'll be fine. This data set that I have here was about 4.5 million records. But if you have billions of records, all you have to do is make sure that your SQL warehouse can handle it. Yeah.
So when you're pushing down or when you're creating new columns in Sigma, does that actually create new data in the warehouse underneath or in Databricks?
Good question. So the column calculations that I showed you here, they were not getting created in Databricks. What is really happening for those columns, if you take my quantity times cost as an example, all it's really doing is in the select statement in the SQL, it's doing quantity times unit cost. So it's not actually creating that in Databricks. We do have a feature called materialization, where you can, if you wanted to, you can take that data set and you can materialize it back into Databricks. So that's when, in that case, it would obviously create the table, and there are some views that get created on top as well. But only if you do the materialization. And you can set up a schedule for that.
Got it. Thank you.
Is there a way to not run the query?
We're using the microphone, please, because we're also streaming. Thank you, we have a mic right here.
Is there a way to see the underlying code, SQL code?
Yes. So actually, if you go to, let's see. Right here, if you go to the query history, every single query that Sigma ran, you can just click on this and then actually shows you the SQL statement that it ran. So that's one way. We also have an API that you can use to get access to the SQL queries that Sigma is running behind the scenes, and you can pass filters to those queries as well.
Is there a way to snapshot the data and not run the query every time?
Say again?
Is there a way to just have a snapshot of the data and not run the query at all? Meaning, I don't want to have my cluster up and running all the time.
The queries are live.
Okay.
I don't want to use the word snapshot, but the materialization example that I just gave would be one way where you're going against a materialized table instead of against your raw tables, if you will. But the queries are live.
When the end user sort of does their own analytics and drills down, do they have a way to save what they've built and then go back to it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. So they can either just work like I showed, or if they wanted to save their work, they can just save it, make their own copy if they wanted to.
So if I have intermittent usage and my cluster is down because I haven't used it for a while, what happens when a person tries to do this?
So basically on the Databricks side, the warehouse will spin up when we fire a query. And we have a query timeout, I believe. I don't remember for sure exactly what the number is, but I think the query timeout by default is 2 minutes. So the warehouse spins up in that time frame and is able to run those queries. The results will come back. Otherwise, the workbook basically says that the query is timed out. And then you would have to basically, there's a refresh icon here. You'd have to click on the refresh icon. This time around, the warehouse is already up. So the queries will execute fine, and you'll see the results.
Give me a run.
Yeah, that was a long way just for me to ask this question. Is there a read-only version of this? So if I create some sort of set of spreadsheets that are linked back to the Databricks instance, is there a read-only version I can use to share with people as well, or does everyone have to have a license to actually view the different workbooks I create in here?
So we have different kinds, I think, if I understand it correctly with your question, so we have different kinds of licenses. So what I'm showing you, you think of it as an Explorer license, where I have the ability to explore and make my own modifications. We also have a viewer license, and the viewer can only view these workbooks. They can still filter, but they can't actually create their own dashboards, create their own visualizations. Don't quote me on this, but I think our viewer licenses come free as part of our platform. We only charge for the Explorer and Creator licenses.
All good?
Yep. Thank
All
you.
right, well, thank you.
Thank you for your time.